hold up, I am on my way, I'm in motion. Let's go to the ocean. Yeah, let's go outside. We can hang out on the beach without freezing. Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Welcome to Crafty Beach. This is Julie. Today I have a total of 5 new Beachy Coastal DIYs for you, all using supplies from the Dollar Tree. I think I got one thing from Dollar General and Target. So, let's go. Okay, our first DIY today is going to be a Kirkland's dupe. I saw this really cool art print available at Kirkland's. The problem is that it's regularly $60, and I thought we could recreate that with Dollar Tree stuff, right? So I went on Canva Pro and I found 4 whales that I thought were really cute and would go well, like little watercolor whales. And I'm going to go ahead and try to share these images with you guys. Please let me know if it doesn't work. I'm hoping that you'll be able to get them. Even if you don't have a pro, we will find out. I think I've done it before in the past. So all I'm going to do is just start cutting out whales. I picked 4. I have 2 going to the right and 2 going to the left so that I can kind of stagger them a little bit on the board. And I printed this out on cardstock, just on my regular printer. I kind of wanted to do it like on a thinner like tissue paper or like a napkin so that you wouldn't be able to see the paper, on the sign. But I didn't really have anything I could use, and my printer was having enough difficulty. I didn't want to get like a paper jam or something like that. But I know that you can totally do that. But one thing I really like about Mod Podging cardstock is that you usually don't have to deal with the bubbles. So I'm going to use 5 of these little shelf signs from the Dollar Tree. I love these. These are the same things that I used for my coastal flag this year, if you've seen that video. And I'm going to kind of do the same technique on these that I did on that because I think it turned out really cute. So they have like a rope handle. And so I'm just going to cut the knots off the bottom and go ahead and open up all 5 of these little shelves. I'm going to go ahead and save the ropes because I want to use those later in this DIY. I love these shelves. I think they come in more than one size. I think they used to be larger, but I really like this because these are real thick, they're flat, and they're not your typical Dollar Tree sign, if you know what I mean. So just snipping. Going through those. I like to save the little rings on them as well because, that's just calling for another project. And what I want to do is, I know these are that beautiful like wood color, and normally I would leave that, but I really want to try to do that Kirkland's dupe, so we're going to paint them. But they're easy to paint, so I'm just going to use some simple acrylic paint. This is the color Ivory. And I kind of want it to look coastal farmhouse, very beachy. So I'm just going to go all over with a sloppy coat of ivory paint. I'm not worrying about attaching the signs together just yet because I kind of want to do that at the end. So I just kind of have them all together and I'm just kind of painting them. That way, like the paint won't leak down in between the signs. And I get one good coat on there and dry it. Now, I noticed that you could still see the wood through it pretty well. So I am going to go over it just with another coat of ivory. And it's okay if some of the wood shows through because that's just going to kind of make it look a little bit distressed. I had so much fun putting these videos together today for you guys. I really hope you enjoy them. A little later is maybe my favorite DIY project ever. Just let you know. And we have our signs painted. Now, the way these whales are going to be, they're going to overlap the little, overlap the signs. So they're going to need to be cut. That's kind of how the original sign looked. And that's kind of how I wanted it. Now, I went back and forth whether I should cut the whales before or after I get them glued on there, and I go for after, but you might want to do it before. It's kind of up to you. If you do it after, just make sure it's really dry before you cut it. So I just put a thin layer of Mod Podge on the sign. I also put Mod Podge on the back of the whale. That way I can reposition like this if I don't get it on there quite right. And I'm just going to worry about centering the first whale, and then I can kind of use that for reference for our other 3 whales. So I'm also going to Mod Podge on top. The cardstock is so thick that you really don't have to dry it too much before you can go ahead and Mod Podge on top. But then I dry that layer and Mod Podge again. We're going to be using a lot of Mod Podge on this project because I really want this to stay together. It's quite a big piece for my hallway, and I just love how it turned out. It's so cute. And I didn't spend $60, right? So I'm going to do the same thing with whale number 2 here. And I'm going to I'll share all of these whales individually if you want, because I printed mine individually to get them as big as possible on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And then I'll also share them all together if you want to do like maybe a smaller version of this. And I really hope that works. And I'm going to do the same thing on all the whales. So basically I Mod Podge the back of the whale, but I also Mod Podge the sign. That way I can reposition. And overlapping the cracks between the signs as I go, and just kind of nesting them in each other. 4 of them at this size. I printed them, maybe 10.5 inches wide. I really wanted to use the print and cut feature on my Cricut, but they have a 9.25 inch limit, which is really annoying. So I was like, oh no, I need them to be bigger. And so once I get them all on there, I'm Mod Podging over the top and drying. So funny, I released a best of Crafty Beach video recently with my patriotic DIYs, and I always called Mod Podge Mod Podge, and I have no idea where I got that from. Maybe my mother. She pronounced things so funny. I'm originally from the Midwest, Missouri, and oh my goodness. My grandma would wash her car and change the oil in her car. Like, everybody said things funny. So people were laughing and correcting me at my video and saying that I had them saying Mod Podge as well. And I'm like, oh no, you guys broke me of that, man. When I started coming out with videos, so many people were in my comments going, it's Mod Podge. It's not Mod Podge. I don't know. I never even thought about it. So funny. So once I get it all on there, I am distressing all of it with just a little bit more ivory, just to kind of break it up, try to make it look a little bit more like a hand-painted sign, and then more Mod Podge. I am trying to Mod Podge it down as much as I can to try to hide the seams a little bit, and then dry it. Now here's the tricky part, cutting it. I'm using a razor blade, and I don't know if it wasn't totally dry or if my razor blade wasn't sharp enough, but I did have a little tearing of the cardstock when I went to cut it. That's why I was suggesting that you might want to cut it before. It might be a little trickier, but maybe with like a paper cutter if you want a perfect cut. Since I'm going for a coastal farmhouse look, I don't mind if it rips a little bit. I'll just sand that, and it's going to add just a little bit more distressing to it. Now, the second whale, I had a little bit more trouble with, but I did change my blade on my razor blade, and I'm thinking maybe it just wasn't totally dry, you know, underneath with all the Mod Podge that I used. But we're going to make it work. I'm just trying not to rip it and wishing that I'd cut it before. But I have cut it after before, and I don't know. I'm thinking it just wasn't that dry. The problem I had on that one is that I kind of cut a sliver. So that whale's not going to be perfect. But, you know, with Coastal Farmhouse, maybe that will add to the charm, right? I'm just trying to sand that and glue down that little strip that I totally messed up. And keep on cutting the whales. This sign with the 5 signs together turned out really large. I'm not sure what the actual dimensions on it are. I didn't measure it. But Seriously, quite a substantial piece, and I just love the vibe. It's so simple but so pretty, and it totally goes with all of my coastal beachy stuff in my hallway. So I got all of the signs cut apart and just sanding the edges to smooth that down. Now I want to attach them together. You could totally glue them together, and I have done that in the past, but when I made my flag sign, I tied them together. I love how that turned out. And since I have all this rope, why not? So I'm going to start on the bottom hole, even though that's not really functional. And I'm going to tie a knot in the front, bring it around the back, and bring it through and tie it on the front on the other side. Basically just to fill that hole in, because all of the other holes are going to have little rope knots in it. And I think the rope adds another little nautical coastal touch to the project, and that's one reason I like to do it like this. And it's also going to hang them slightly apart from each other and give a really cool effect of a hanging slat sign. So basically I tie it in the front, I feed it through, and then I tie it again and cut off the excess rope. Probably the only tricky thing about it is getting that big rope back through that hole without any fraying causing you any trouble. But whenever it starts to fray, I just cut it off to try to give myself a clean edge. You could tape the edges, but I had a lot of tying and ropes to do with the different 5 signs, so I was trying to just get it in there. So I'm just going to continue doing that on all 5 of the signs here until they're all connected. I wanted to take a moment to thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate you. And if you don't mind, hit that like button if you're enjoying this video. And when you're done watching today, if you could post your favorite DIY below, I would love to read your comments. I know which one's my favorite. Oh man, I really love it. Just wait and see. And I really dug deep to try to come up with some beachy inspiration for you guys today. So I really hope you enjoyed these projects. This one's a dupe, but I think all the rest of them are kind of original. So I love them. I think they turned out so fun. And we have our last one. Now, for the top, I'm also going to use that same rope that came with the shelves. And it comes with 2 ropes together on that ring. So I'm just going to take one of the ropes off, and that will leave me with a ring with 1 set of rope. And that will work perfectly. So again, I'm just going to feed it in the back. The sign's so large I can barely get it in my shot here. And try to center the ring while I tie off the knots in the front. My ruler is not quite big enough, so that kind of shows you a little bit how big this sign turned out. And I'm going to try to center that so that my sign will hang evenly. And that's all there is to that. It looks really cute, I love it. And then I'm like, it needs a little bit more distressing. I always think everything needs a little bit more distressing. So I'm using a chunky brush from the Dollar Tree and some more of that ivory acrylic. And I'm going over for one last little coastal distress. And then I am in love with my new sign. I think it turned out really cute. My husband and my son really think it's fun. And it looks great in my hallway. One of the projects that I already made was my school of fish that I had in my hallway. And I have a little bit of a starfish collection on my wall. And so this is going to go nicely. And this is how it looks. Isn't it cute? I just love it. I love the colors. I love the simplicity. And I love the whales on there. Okay, are you ready for another DIY? I thought this little plastic serving dish from the summer section at Dollar Tree looked like a surfboard. So let's go for it, right? Let's make it a surfboard. I'm going to use some of this faux leather, also from the Dollar Tree, to try to cover up that cool shape and to try to make a surfboard. It's the perfect size to cover up this board, which is cool. And I've never used this faux leather before, and I've had it for a while, and I'm glad that I finally thought of something to use it for. So what I'm going to do is I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to cut it out Now, I do have a fail in this project, but I'm going to include it just for your reference because it's always good to learn a lesson, right? So I am going to just sit it on the back of the leather and draw around to kind of make a little pattern of what we're going to need to cover the surfboard. I don't really want to wrap it around because it's got so many different angles that I think that might be hard to get it all flat. So once I have it on there, I am just using my fabric scissors to cut it out. This faux leather cuts really easily. I really enjoyed cutting this. And then to decorate this white leather, I'm going to use sublimation. Now, I know not a lot of you guys are set up for sublimation, and I don't use it too often, but we're going to try it today. I'm going to do this sea turtle image that I designed on Canva and try to do a sea turtle surfboard. Now, if you're not set up for sublimation, I'm also making this an SVG so that you could, I'm going to share it on Cricut. So you could use your Cricut and make a stencil and paint this on if you want to do it. I'll also include the sea turtle if you are set up for sublimation. Or, if you just want to use any kind of stencil. I was actually thinking about just using painter's tape and doing stripes. You can decorate it any way you want. But I am sublimating. I'm trying here at 380 degrees for 1 minute, and then I moved it to the other side of the surfboard. But I had total failure here. It melted the faux leather. Way too hot, way too long. I usually do 400 for 1 minute, so I thought I was decreasing it enough, but for real, completely melted. There was nothing I could do with it. So luckily I had another piece of leather and we can try again, right? So I'm going to reduce my temperature and way reduce my time. It's kind of a bumpy faux leather, and so it's not going to give me a perfect transfer of the image, but that's kind of what I was going for, is kind of a distressed coastal look. So we're going to try it again. It sublimated all the way through my wax paper. It was crazy. So I'm going to go ahead and put my image back on there on my sublimation paper, tape it down with some heat-safe tape, cover it up with some wax paper, and let's try this again. This time I'm only going to do 350 for 30 seconds because I'm scared. And the only part that melted this time was the small part that overlapped between the two different pressings. So that's okay. It was minimal damage. So this is how it looks. It's a little faint in some areas because I only did 30 seconds, but the faux leather melts, people. So lesson learned. So we have our little turtle image. And again, you can decorate yours anyway. Any kind of stencil would work really well. I really think the stripes would look well too. Like different shape of width of stripes going up and down, I think would look really pretty, like in a blue. And I just set my surfboard on there, cut out the design again. This time on the front so I can kind of see how I'm cutting that out. And using my fabric scissors, just carefully cutting out the shape of our surfboard. I love using sublimation, and I haven't used it forever. Like, my printer was clogged. It's been so long. So I'm going to just use hot glue and do one side of my surfboard and attach that leather. I did it exactly the same size as the dish, so I kind of have to stretch it when I glue the other side. So I'm kind of just working a section at a time and trying to pull it to the edges. Now the edges look a little rough after I get done gluing that all on. So I thought some of this nautical white rope from the Dollar Tree would make a great border around here. It's going to add another little coastal touch. It's going to go with the surfboard theme, I think. And it's going to hide any of that floral tray that you might be able to still see around the edges, kind of clean it up a little bit. So I'm just simply using hot glue and gluing that white rope all the way around. Now you can see that my surfboard is quite flat because I, pulled the leather, the faux leather tight over it. And normally a surfboard would be a little bit more rounded or concave. And so Once I get like my entire rope border on here and glued down, I decide it's too flat, and then I'm like, what would happen if I stuffed it? Like, you know, kind of like stuffing a pillow. So that's what I'm going to do next. First, I'm going to do a little hanger on the back, just some twine and some hot glue. And then I'm using my heat gun to kind of dissolve the hot glue on the bottom carefully. I'm trying not to mess up my faux leather. I don't need to be trying to do this a third time. And so I'm carefully lifting that up because I want to put some stuffing in there from an old pillow. And I'm so glad that I went back and did this because this gave it like the perfect like rounded touch that I think my surfboard needed. I'm just using a wood stick to kind of push that stuffing down in the end where I can't really get my hand that far. And we're just going to lightly stuff this all around so that it kind of just arches out a little bit and it's going to look more like a little surfboard. And it is a small surfboard, but I think it turned out really fun, especially for a quick little wall hanging. If you make this DIY and you decorate it differently or the same, I would love for you to share it with me. We have a Facebook group called Crafty Beach. I will post a link below, and you are going to be blown away by the creativity of all the crafty beach bums out there. Like, it is mind-blowing what you guys come up with. It is fantastic. And you'll also be notified whenever I post a new video. Here's our surfboard. Isn't it cute? I love it. This is how it looks in my hallway. It's kind of a dark part of my hallway there, but I'm trying to get enough light in there to show you how it looks. And it fit perfectly there in my hallway. Okay, are you guys ready for probably my favorite DIY ever? I'm going to use some of this craft wood from the Dollar Tree, all the same size. I'm using a total of 6 pieces. I'm also going to use a Target dollar spot sign for the background. I got this on clearance for like $1.50. I remember telling you guys to go get some because they're really cute and I love the finish on it, so I'm just going to leave that as is, but you could do this with whatever you have. This is kind of a larger sign, so it's going to make my project a little bit bigger, which is what I wanted. And I am just going to cut my first piece of craft wood and start making some cuts. You'll need like a handsaw or a power saw or somebody that can saw some wood for you. And I did one side and then I'm going to do the other, just going end to end. I'm using my little square ruler from the Dollar Tree to make sure that I get some square cuts. I'm not fantastic at box building, but we get it done today. And then on this piece, I got to make sure that I only cut the inside so that it will fit. And that's going to be the third side of our little box, like that. This frame is great because it has like a little bit of a lip that I can put these little wood pieces on to attach it. Now, this is the last piece, and I'm going to go ahead and cut that down to size. Now, I'm going to need there to be a hole in the top of this box. And the top is actually going to be over on the left there. And so then I'm going to take that piece and cut that down. So I'm trying to determine how big I want my hole to be. I want it to be fairly large because what we're going to do with this, I like to get some big ones. And so I'm just going to cut 2 smaller pieces for the top, 1 for each side of the top. Now that wood cuts pretty good. It does kind of splinter a tiny bit. And so I'm just going to use my sanding block from the Dollar Tree and sand off any splinters. Coastal Farmhouse, you can look a little rough, but you don't want any splinters really sticking out. And we're going to go ahead and start building this box. So I'm just going to use Gorilla Glue hot glue. Works great for wood. And glue on this side of the box, and then glue on the other side. Not sure if I got those on there totally square because I do end up having some weird gaps and angles here at the end, but it could just be my cutting, who knows. And I'm going to attach that one with hot glue as well to finish off the bottom part of the box. That's when I realized it wasn't quite square, but we're going to go with it. And then we're going to glue on the little pieces on each side of the top. And we have half of our little box there. Now, I want to build a frame for the front. If you were using a picture that you had two of and it had a pretty wide frame, you could actually kind of stack the projects together. I didn't have anything that was the same side, so I'm going to make a frame. Now, I want words to be on the top and the bottom, and so I'm going to have these pieces of craft wood go all the way edge to edge, kind of opposite of what we did before in cutting. And then the side pieces are going to be like what's left. And I suck at measuring, so I just kind of measure and then draw a line, and then that's where I cut. It works better for me than measuring. I don't know why. Maybe that's just not how my brain works. So we're going to cut 2 pieces for the sides, and we're going to have a little frame for our box. Now, all we have to do is assemble it. So I'm going to give it a quick sanding, get any of the splinters off. The side that had a sticker on it did have a little bit of residue, so I don't really use that side if I can avoid it. But this wood's pretty cool. Like, it has some knots in it, but not a lot. And so I'm going to flip it over once I get it how I like it, and I'm going to use my staple gun to build a frame. You could also glue it, but I'm going to be using my staple gun for the next project, so I already had it handy. And I was trying not to get my head in there, and then I just kept missing my staples. So make sure you know where your staples are going. But I just keep stapling it until this thing is going to be really secure. And I might have to get my head in there a little bit. And this is what we're going to use to cover the front of our frame. This is chicken wire that I found at Dollar Tree. I couldn't believe it. And I have been itching for something to use my chicken wire on, and this project turned out perfectly. It's a little tricky unwinding it. There is a wire like wrapped all the way around it, so once you find that, you can get it open. Now to cut the chicken wire, I'm just using some of those floral scissors from the Dollar Tree. They work great at cutting wire, but any kind of heavy-duty scissor you have, just be careful. I probably should have wore gloves because I did poke myself once with the chicken wire. It is sharp for real. But I'm just cutting it down to size so that we can have a front panel for our little frame. And then I'm just going to use my staple gun to staple down all the sides. I want it to be tight and flat on our frame. And I just keep stapling it down until it is extremely flat. And so now we have the front of our box done. Have you guys guessed what this is for? If you looked at my cover photo, you probably already know, but it's going to be for seashells. And I'm so excited about it because I go to the beach all the time, and I always come home with some shells in my pocket. So I just attached the frame to the box with more hot glue, trying to make it as square as possible. And I'm so glad I made this large because I'm going to be filling this up for real. And it's a great way to collect my seashells when I get home from the beach. Now, once I have it all together, I'm just going to clean it up a little bit, trying to get some of the hot glue off that may have seeped out some of my cuts. And that's what you'll see. I do have some weird cracks. It's Coastal Farmhouse. You could probably leave it, but I was trying to make it look as good as I possibly can. So I'm just going to use some spackle to try to fill in any cracks, to try to give me some forgiveness for my box building skills, but I think I'm getting better. I used to be really bad at this. And so you probably shouldn't touch it with your finger, but a crafter does. So I get that on there and dry, and then I'm just going to sand off that excess, and we are going to prepare our little box for paint. This craft wood from the Dollar Tree paints really easily. I'm just going to use 1 coat of acrylic. I'm going to mix together turquoise and white because I really want that light turquoise color. It's very beachy, very fun, and trying to get it the right shade. and we can start painting our box. I really love like a blue sign with white painting on it. So that's what we're going to do today for this box. And I am going to start by just painting all of the sides. I actually leave it this color. I don't distress it because it's so pretty. I think it looks really good. But you totally could distress it. You can decorate your box however you want. I absolutely am in love with this DIY. I couldn't stop smiling at it. And I've already used it. So just painting all my sides, trying not to mess up any other sides. And then all I have to do is paint the front. I don't paint that, the inside seam there that's up next to the chicken wire. I think it looks fine, just natural. And I didn't really want to have to tape off the chicken wire or get any paint on it. So I'm just going to paint the top. Okay, it's time to decorate it. I'm going to use my Cricut. So I'm going to take you through the process here on Cricut Design Space. If you have a Cricut and you're scared of Design Space, don't be scared. It's not that hard. I always start with like squares. So these are rectangles exactly the size of the top and the bottom panels. And then I am going to kind of map it out with those. That way my letters will be the right size. I'm going to go ahead and type that in and find a font that I like. And I will share this Cricut design as well if you want to recreate the project the same as me. So once you have a font you like, you can stretch it to make it longer like that. And then you can actually copy that and paste it and then use that same stretched font to do your other line as well. So that's what I did there. Super easy. You can even, I made the boxes blue. You can even go ahead and make your writing the color that you're going to paint it, which I'm going to do white to kind of see how that's going to look. Delete the rectangles, and we are ready to cut. I am going to rearrange these on my mat because I'm going to be making a stencil to do a hand-painted sign. And I'm going to want some of that stencil vinyl around the borders so that I have room to paint this. So that's all there is to it. And it's time to cut it out. I'm going to use some of this stencil vinyl that I get on Amazon. I love it. I'll try to remember to post a link below. And we are ready to weed this out. I used a nice bold font, very easy to weed. The letters are large. They don't do crazy things. And I'm just going to go ahead and weed that out. This is my Cricut Bright Pad. It helps me see because your girl's getting old and it's hard to see the weed. But you can use whatever you have. And I'm going to weed this out. Now I have a funny story about this because I just had somebody scream at me in my comments about how I'm not allowed to use a Cricut because not everybody has one. And I'm like, hello, that video was from a year ago, and who are you to tell me what I can use? I have a Cricut. I got it as a gift for Christmas and my birthday from my husband and my son, and if I want to use my Cricut, I will. So there. And I'm also using my paper transfer paper to apply that to my box. I get that on Amazon as well. I have it in a 6-inch roll and a 12-inch roll, and I love it, love it, love it. It works so well. And I'm going to put my stencil on there. So, I haven't used my Cricut since Easter, so long that I forgot my password for Cricut Design Space. Because I'm always trying to give you guys ideas. If you don't have a Cricut, all you have to do is use the sticker letters from Dollar Tree and you can recreate lettering. But if you have a Cricut and it makes your life easier to do lettering on your craft projects, you go ahead and use your Cricut. And I'm going to go ahead and use my Cricut too. I don't care. So I thought that was extremely rude. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm using like just a stencil dauber, a foam dauber from the Dollar Tree, and white acrylic paint. I'm just going to do one coat. It's okay if it isn't perfect. That's going to add to the coastal farmhouse feel. And then I'm going to go in and weed out the middle parts of the letters that stay behind after a stencil. And it says every seashell has a story. And I just love that saying. I think it's so fun. Then I thought the sides were a little bare. So I'm going to use some seashells. These are all from the Dollar Tree. And I'm trying to pick out like 4 really like unique ones. Kind of one round and one kind of long. And until I think it looks perfect. And I thought that would be a fun addition to our little seashell box. And I am going to glue that on with some hot glue. And again, my last pineapple video, I just showed you guys how to do lettering with stickers from the Dollar Tree. You can do the color you want the letters to be, put the letters down, and then paint over them, and then weed them off, just like you would weed off a stencil. Totally works. Okay, and we have them all glued down. And here it is, probably my favorite DIY ever. I am in love with this project. This is how it looks. I've already got some pretty seashells in there. I love that it's large enough to take large shells as well, and whatever treasures I'm going to find at the beach. Okay, it's time for beach DIY number 4. I'm going to use one of the seahorses from the Dollar Tree Shore Living section. The little metal star had already fallen off, so it's perfect. You can use this one or the wood one. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to have to paint it just to cover up all the stuff it had going on, because this is going to be a background for a project that we're going to do today. So it doesn't really matter what color. I'm using, I think this is cashew chalk paint, just to get good coverage, because I'm painting over paper, I'm painting over glitter, and I just kind of need it to be like kind of a uniform color, because we are going to make a driftwood seahorse today. It's a little light, so I'm going to go ahead and distress it with some antique wax by Waverly as well, to kind of give it like a driftwood or wood look. So if there are any areas of the seahorse showing through behind my driftwood today, it's going to kind of blend in. This is the driftwood we're going to use. This is a vase filler that I get at Target. It goes on sale a lot, so when it goes on sale, definitely stock up. It works great for crafting. I've made many DIYs with it. And we are going to build a driftwood seahorse. I used to have one, maybe a little smaller than this, on my wall that I bought. It cost tons of money and it fell apart. So I kind of wanted to recreate it by making like a 3D driftwood seahorse where it has driftwood on the front and the back of the sign. Basically, I'm only going to be using the sign for the shape of the seahorse. Now, this is going to be my front of it that I'm going to hang on my wall. So this is the side that I'm going to want to look really pretty. So I am just using my hot glue gun and gluing down one piece at a time. It's kind of like a puzzle. And I want it to be 3D too. So I'm going to just do like a kind of a base coat all over and then build it out a little bit towards me as well. So definitely like a puzzle, just keep trying pieces until you get a piece that looks like it's going to fit fairly well. And if you need to go back and patch it in, go back with another piece. And since we can build up as well, if they don't quite go together, you can always cover that up with another piece. And sometimes you just have to glue the driftwood to each other if you can't get it down to glue it to the sign. We're going really fast because this project is kind of time consuming. This is like 10 times speed, I believe. Just so I don't bore you with my driftwood today. And sometimes you can find like a really cool like rounded piece, which works great for the little ridges on the back of the seahorse. Again, totally like a puzzle. And we're just going to keep building this seahorse out until it's completely covered. I'm also going to do the back in driftwood as well, because again, I want it to be 3D, kind of what I used to have. I had one that had like driftwood, like a dark driftwood, and they were all like nailed together. And it was really cute, but I think I'm going to get like pretty much the same effect with this project, DIY project today. And I thought this would look great in my hallway with my whales, my surfboard, my school of fish. Just another little nautical touch for my hallway. So I am just gluing these down around the tail. We've about got the entire surface of the seahorse covered. And then I'm going to just kind of start building it out a little bit, like in the middle part of the seahorse, just kind of raising that up to kind of make it arch out. So it's not going to be, I don't want it to be a flat piece. I want it to look like a real seahorse body would look, with the middle part arched out a little bit more. So I'm just going to build that up a little bit. I had trouble seeing this side a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and patch up anything on that side as well. And just using my hot glue gun to get any loose hot glue strings off. Now the back, I'm just going to do quick and dirty. So I'm kind of just doing them all the same direction. I basically just want it to have driftwood on it. I don't really care what it looks like as much as I did before because this is going to be on the back. Basically, I just need this for the depth of the seahorse to make it look three-dimensional and kind of push it away from the wall a little bit. So this one was way easier, just doing it all straight like that. And you might like that look better. I kind of liked the up and down look, kind of the all over look for the front of it, and way more random than I did on this side. And if I have like any exposed wood on the back, I'm not really caring as much as I did on the front. Just trying to fill it in as much as possible, especially around the edges where you might be able to see it. The tail and the little parts like that can be a little tricky. Just work with some smaller pieces until you get it filled in. I've tried ordering driftwood on Amazon and it's pretty expensive. I have a hard time getting enough of it in like kind of a uniform at the beach. And so I like crafting with this from the Dollar Tree. Now it's too light for me because I wanted it to be like more of a darker wood. So we are just going to distress it with some Antique Wax by Waverly. I get this at Walmart, and a chunky brush from the Dollar Tree, and wiping off the excess with a baby wipe if I get it a little bit too dark. And we are just going to distress this all over. I have brown walls in my house, so I didn't want it to match in. I kind of wanted some contrast, and so that's one reason why I'm going so dark on this driftwood. But you could leave yours as is or distress it in any color you want. I think distressing it in white would look kind of cool too, or like ivory. And so I'm also going to go ahead and do the same stain on the back, kind of just working a half at a time. I don't want it to dry too much before I wipe off the excess and kind of blend that in with my baby wipe. And I love staining with this stuff. It works so fast, it's so easy to use, and it gives such a cool finish to wood. And I want this to look like a finished project, and you're going to be able to see some of the back from the side, so I want it to be all uniform and the same color. So we have our front and back stained. I also have to go in and stain my sides to get the sides of the sign and any side pieces of the driftwood that might be exposed to kind of make it look more uniform. And that's pretty much all there is to this DIY. I left the existing hanger on there and kind of worked around it. So it already has a hanger, and this is how it looks hanging in my hallway next to my school of fish from a previous Dollar Tree DIY. And I think it's magnificent. Isn't it pretty? I love it. Okay, our last DIY. I found this great charger at Dollar General for $3, and we're going to use it for this DIY today. I'm going to start by painting it. I'm using ivory chalk paint. And I want to leave the outer ring of this charger, that original color of brown, just to kind of give myself a border. So I'm going to start painting this on the second row, which is a little tricky because it kind of winds around, but trying to get that even. And then I'm going to paint all of the center in with ivory. I find that a brush worked better to get into the individual pieces, and we're going to paint this all over with ivory. Now, if you can't find this cool charger or anything like it, you could totally do this with the Dollar Tree rope. If you use the white rope, you could glue it to itself and spiral it around and get a round circle like this, and then you wouldn't even have to paint it. You could do it with brown rope and then paint it. If you use chalk paint on rope, it works really well. And we have our white charger now. I'm going to use this nautical rope from the Dollar Tree. This is a 9.5 foot one. This is the thinnest one that I found from there. You could also use like a large jute for this part of it. But what we're going to do is we're going to make this little charger into a sand dollar. So a sand dollar has this really cool little pattern in the middle of it. Kind of looks like a flower. So I'm going to use some of that Dollar Tree rope and just hot glue it on into loops. I'm going to kind of try to do the same pattern that's on one. I don't really want to cut the individual pieces of rope. I kind of want it to all be one piece, and so that's what I'm trying to do here. And I kind of want it to be hidden. So the fifth one, I'm going to go ahead and try to glue that one down before my fourth one so that that rope there in the middle is kind of on top of it, and we'll kind of hide that. But that worked really well. You could totally cut the 5 little circles individually, but I was trying to go for like a less seams look. And so there's the middle of our sand dollar. I had so much fun putting this one together. It turned out so cute. And now the sand dollar has 5 little slots. So I'm going to use that same rope. And I am going to go ahead and cut off 4 pieces because the other slits should be all about the same size. And I'm just going to hot glue those down into little rope ovals on our little charger. And it's going to make this charger look like a sand dollar. I think this project turned out so fun. And again, you could totally recreate this with Dollar Tree rope just by gluing yourself a rope spiral, which was my intention originally with this. But then I had this charger and I said, oh, this would work perfectly. And one last step to this DIY. So here is our 5th and final little slit on our little sand dollar. And again, just attaching it with hot glue. And that's all there is to this DIY. It's so cute. It was so easy to put together. And I'm just going to use some twine and tie a knot to make a little simple loop hanger. And I'm going to hot glue that on the back of my Dollar General charger. And we have a little sand dollar. And this is how it looks in my home. I love it. Okay, guys, you know we are ready for the final reveal. But first, I need to give a huge super thanks to the following viewers, my crafty beach bums, that have given me super thanks below my videos. It is a great way to give a cash tip to your favorite creators and support small creators like me on YouTube. And I really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much. You can leave as little as $2. It's totally up to you. But it definitely helps buy me some craft supplies to make more DIYs for you. Okay, it's time for the final reveal. Thank you for watching.
For better days to come and carry us like wind in our sails. Hold on tight, I can smell the shore, it's right in front of us if we just hold on tight. This vision that I saw is getting closer every dawn.